Over 3,000 years ago, a mysterious and distinctive culture thrived in the far north of Europe, far beyond the Mediterranean world. This realm, known as Hyperborea to the Greeks, was said to be inhabited by giants living beyond the north wind. Within this realm, an elite class of god-kings held dominion, adorned in gold and riding mighty chariots, wielding magnificent bronze swords. These warrior kings ruled over a remarkably complex society that, for the first time in history, connected with the Greeks and Romans of the later classical age. Contrary to the belief of the Greeks and Romans, who viewed the lands beyond the Mediterranean as inhabited by illiterate barbarians capable only of warfare and slavery, Scandinavia had already been part of a vast interconnected trade system for over 1,000 years by the time Rome was founded in the 8th century BC. During this period, Scandinavia produced some of the most impressive artifacts known from that time, as ambitious chieftains embarked on trade expeditions, transporting amber and skins from the Baltic down the river systems of Eastern Europe in exchange for resources from distant lands. The catalyst for this ancient societal revolution was bronze, a trade good of utmost importance that kickstart the birth of the modern world. Bronze, a composite of tin and copper forged together in intense heat with a bellows, held a solidity and versatility unlike any other known resource. It ushered in a material culture that had never been seen before, giving rise to the production of agricultural tools, hunting spears, daggers, status symbols, ornamental grave goods, drinking vessels, jewelry, and weapons of war. As the secrets of bronze smelting spread outward from the Near East, ambitious individuals recognized its immense potential, leading to a surge in demand and the emergence of an international economy. Although metalworking had existed in Europe before, with the first smiths residing in the Balkans over 6,000 years ago, it was the knowledge of bronze smelting that truly revolutionized the continent. While localized cultures that focused on gold metalwork existed, they eventually declined due to environmental disasters. However, the expertise gradually migrated westward, and people throughout Europe began utilizing local copper and gold to create various items. The discovery of adding tin, a scarce resource, to copper led to the integration of Europe into a unified trade system reliant on tin. This trade system thrived until approximately 1200 BC, when the power of the Bronze Age kings waned due to the vulnerability of the trade system itself and the emergence of iron as a more accessible and abundant metal. Despite the eventual decline of the Bronze Age, the Scandinavian system endured for at least 500 years longer than the traditional end of the Near East Bronze Age system. It left behind a wealth of evidence in the form of captivating prehistoric artifacts and burial mounds that still dot the Scandinavian landscape today. The Nordic Bronze Age tells a story that dates back 6,000 years when Europe was vastly different, with ancient forests covering much of the land. During this time, a resilient population of hunter-gatherers lived much as they had for tens of thousands of years. Around 1400 BC, agriculture began to spread northward and westward from the Fertile Crescent, introducing wheat, barley, and domesticated animals to Europe. This agricultural revolution transformed not only the landscape, which transitioned to a slash-and-burn style of agriculture, but also society itself. It facilitated a food surplus, the emergence of a priestly class, and the development of communal places of worship, such as megalithic structures found from Sardinia to Orkney. These monumental projects, contemporary to the city-states of Sumer and the earliest Egyptian pyramids, required significant human labor and the exploitation of extensive flint mines, indicating a remarkably determined and robust society. However, the population in Scandinavia was not large enough to develop the same megalithic traditions as their southern counterparts. Excavations of early Scandinavian hunter-gatherer sites from around 1800 BC reveal a strong affinity for the sea, with an archaeological culture known as the funnel beaker gradually emerging as agricultural and pastoralist technologies spread from the Middle East through Central Europe towards the Baltic. Contacts with Central Europe introduced carts and domesticated animals to Scandinavia. Eventually, the next technological revolution of metallurgy occurred, bringing social stratification and an outward-looking elite culture, characterized by single graves, in contrast to the previous communal society. In summary, the ancient Nordic Bronze Age represents a captivating period in history when a unique culture thrived in the far north of Europe. It was a time of remarkable societal connections, trade networks, technological innovations, and profound transformations that left an enduring legacy in the form of artifacts, burial sites, and megalithic structures. During the 3rd millennium BC, there was a growing emphasis on individual power rather than collective identity. This shift towards social stratification, which may have begun around that time, had a profound impact on the languages spoken by most Europeans today. Interestingly, the language spoken by the Neolithic people who built Stonehenge did not survive, with the exception of the Basques in northern Spain who still retain remnants of that ancient tongue. Instead, the language spoken by Western Europeans likely originated far to the east, on the Central Asian steppe, spoken by the Indo-Europeans. As early as the 17th century, linguists from various parts of the world started noticing the striking similarities among numerous languages. These connections went beyond the European languages like French, German, English, Italian, and Greek, extending to Armenian, Indian, and even the Tocharian languages of Central Asia. It became evident that all these languages shared a common ancestor, giving rise to the enigma of the Indo-Europeans. The idea emerged that this ancestral language might have spread through a military conquest of ancient Europe by an external force. One prominent theory, developed by German linguist Otto Schrader in the 1800s and later expanded upon by Maria Gimbutas in the 1950s, suggests that the Proto-Indo-Europeans, potentially following a technological revolution such as horse domestication, left their homeland on the Pontic steppe and migrated in various directions, significantly influencing civilizations across the ancient world. They potentially played a role in the decline of the advanced civilization in the Indus Valley and introduced chariot technology in Egypt. Indo-Europeans established their dominance over most of the region, leaving a lasting impact, particularly in the form of chariot warfare. The Indo-Europeans had a reputation in Greece, where they were remembered as centaurs, mythical creatures combining the characteristics of humans and horses. They were seen as both fearsome and fascinating, known for their wildness, desire for women, and indulgence in wine. Additionally, they were responsible for the majority of languages spoken in Europe today, indicating a subjugation or at least a takeover by a new elite influenced by Indo-European culture. This raises the question of whether the Indo-Europeans were responsible for the destruction of the megalithic society in Western Europe or if the existing population simply underwent a societal shift as new belief systems arrived from the east. In Scandinavia, where the population was smaller, Indo-Europeans left their mark through burial mounds, horses, carts, and eventually chariots. However, the Indo-European culture merged with the existing native shipbuilding tradition, resulting in the creation of a unique hybrid culture. Competing theories exist as well, with some scholars suggesting Anatolian origins for the Indo-Europeans or denying the notion of an outside invasion altogether, proposing instead a natural evolution of native European beliefs. In recent years, supported by increasing archaeological evidence, the most convincing argument points to the plains north of the Black Sea as the homeland of the Proto-Indo-Europeans. This region was inhabited by steppe people for thousands of years and is associated with the Yamnaya archaeological culture. Around 3300 BC, distinctive Yamnaya archaeology appeared on the steppe. The Yamnaya culture relied on mobile wagons and herding, marking a societal revolution as they shifted from hunting to animal husbandry. This transition provided them with a sustainable food sourced through cheese, milk, and meat. The Yamnaya culture, characterized by single grave barrow building and an individualistic perception of power, spread across Europe and left its mark for millennia to come, influencing works such as Homer's Odyssey and Beowulf. It was on the steppe that horses were domesticated and ridden for the first time, potentially after being raised as a food source for several generations. The earliest evidence of wheeled carts, a significant technological advancement, dates back to at least 3600 BC on the steppe. These developments, although not yet the spoked wheels of chariots, facilitated increased agricultural yields through the use of pack animals and carts for farming. The reasons behind the Yamners' spread into Europe remain mysterious. Some suggest a detrimental climate change around 3200 BC that may have compelled them to migrate westward. Thus, horses, previously hunted to extinction in Europe, made a comeback with steppe nomads riding them and introducing new ways of life, potentially including metallurgy in the areas they entered. The Yamner culture, with its single grave status-based society, was not uniformly imposed everywhere. In some places, particularly in Scandinavia, evidence suggests that there was no actual conflict, and certain regions may have developed their own native elites. Nonetheless, the language of the newcomers eventually took over, bringing forth an entirely new worldview. Around 2300 BC, this new people, or at least their culture, had spread deep into Scandinavia, reaching areas like Uppland and the Oslo fjord. They carried with them the ancestral language of the modern Germanic tongue. These tribes, known as the corded-ware culture, were individualistic and patriarchal, symbolized by the battle axe. Over time, the corded-ware people merged with existing funnel beaker traditions, giving rise to a new society known as the battle axe culture. Both cultures left thousands of graves scattered across the landscape, and recent genetics studies have confirmed a significant genetic connection between the corded-ware people and the Yamner. It's important to note that these archaeological cultures were not unified, nationalistic identities. Instead, they likely represented diverse groups with complex interactions and cultural exchanges. The Nordic Bronze Age was characterized by a diverse collection of tribal groups who shared a common culture and belief system, although they often clashed with each other and with other groups they encountered. Over time, these tribal groupings overlapped, but the adoption of metallurgy and single graves remained constant throughout Europe. Evidence suggests that people during this time period traveled extensively, as seen in the case of the Amesbury Archer, a chieftain found in England around 2300 BC. Genetic testing revealed that he originated from the Alps, belonging to the bell beaker culture that succeeded the megalithic builders. The movement of ideas from east to west was not predetermined, but eventually, the bell beaker culture and their material goods spread back east, surpassing the corded-ware culture. By then, bronze had arrived in the north, leading to significant changes. As the second millennium BC began, there was an increased demand for luxury goods in Scandinavia, opening new avenues for wealth and power through external connections. This resulted in broader-scale interactions between societies, with previously isolated places like Scandinavia developing links across Eurasia. This marked the start of the first linked-up Eurasian economy in the north, driven by the highly sought-after luxury good amber. Seafaring cultures like the Scandinavians considered the ocean a highway rather than a barrier, facilitating trade routes such as the Amber Road, which connected the north and south. Amber from Scandinavia reached the Middle East, specifically the powerful civilizations of Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, and the Hittites. Around the same time, another Indo-European group, possibly related to the corded-ware culture, experienced a significant population shift. The Santasha archaeological culture, descendants of the Yamner, were the first to develop spoked wheels, which revolutionized transportation. By 2100 BC, Santasha kings were buried with impressive war chariots, leading to the spread of this technology and its cultural impact on various regions, including the Hittites, Mitanni, and Hyksos. These chariots played a role in revitalizing the areas they came into contact with. The impact of the Santasha culture extended to early Mycenaean Greece and the metalworking culture of the Danube, particularly in modern-day Hungary and Romania. From there, Scandinavian seafarers began making sea voyages to engage in trade. The Carpathian Basin, known for its flourishing bronze industry, served as a hub for the dissemination of knowledge about spoked wheels and chariots. The maritime nature of Scandinavian society is evident through the prevalence of ship imagery in the archaeological record, highlighting the extensive trade networks along the Atlantic, North Sea, and Baltic regions. During this period, the Nordic Bronze Age witnessed a thriving maritime economy and cultural unity that surpassed the continental cultures. The Amber Road played a crucial role in connecting the North and South, with Scandinavians potentially traveling across Europe to trade amber and skins with the northern Lapps. Bronze started to appear in significant quantities around 1800 BC, gradually replacing copper and leading to notable changes in burial practices. Burial mounds, similar to the Jamnærkirkens, are scattered throughout Denmark, often facing the sea, representing the source of their wealth and power. Notable artifacts from the Nordic Bronze Age include Mycenaean gold beads found in Moldberg's chieftain burial mound and a folding chair resembling those discovered in the eastern Mediterranean. These objects highlight the extensive connections and far-reaching influences of the Nordic Bronze Age civilization. While long-distance trade was vital for the Scandinavians, they also developed a unique insular civilization, adapting imports to suit their Scandinavian context. The Bronze Age brought cultural advances, stunning artistic and technical achievements, and a sense of opulence and success. Around 1500 BC, the societal system in the north became intricately linked with foreign imports, comparable to the Near East and surpassed in Europe only by the Mycenaeans. The archaeological record provides insights into elite lifestyles through thousands of burial mounds, but knowledge of everyday life and living conditions is limited. Glimpses into the Nordic Bronze Age can be found in places like Dartmoor in England, where evidence suggests a partially pastoralist society and the existence of villages. For the less privileged members of society, life may not have changed significantly since the late Stone Age, with slash-and-burn agriculture remaining prevalent. Cattle raising held cultural significance for the Germanic peoples, reminiscent of the Indo-European arrival in the 3rd millennium BC. Carved oxmen and horned animals on oak coffins indicate their fascination with large horned animals, similar to other post-Indo-European societies like Minoan Crete. Evidence from sites like Egtved provides glimpses into the lives of ordinary people. The Egtved girl, dating to around 1370 BC, offers insight into her movements between the Black Forest region of Germany and Denmark, reflecting the interconnectedness of the Nordic Bronze Age world. The famous Trundholm sun chariot, dating to around 1400 BC, represents the material culture of the time and likely played a role in solar ceremonies. Sun cults and religious beliefs during this era remain intriguing, with depictions of elaborate headdresses and rituals found in Swedish rock carvings. The Nordic Bronze Age reached its peak around 1250 BC, uniting Denmark, southern Sweden, and much of the Baltic mainland into a vast cultural area. Extensive trade routes connected Danish islands to various regions, ensuring the steady flow of trade goods. This system endured for 500 years longer than the Near East, eventually declining with the adoption of cremation practices. By the time of Caesar, little evidence of the Nordic Bronze Age remained, except for burial mounds dotting the landscape. However, the cultural and belief systems developed during that time undoubtedly influenced the Germanic peoples who succeeded them.